Hold on. Dimitri, where's this trophy? Where's the trophy? Yeah, no, the box is empty. Are you doing a trophy? I have a 2-minute thing to do. Have we got it? All right. Right. Good afternoon, everybody. This is an incredible audience. I think it shows that we're probably talking about the right thing and the hot thing. And I think in our next session, I'll let other people introduce that. But thank you all for joining. And we're going to see some amazing and very interesting perspectives on the plastics debate and innovations happening at the moment. My name is Josh Brooks. I'm the Business Development Director for the packaging portfolio here at Easy Fairs. Before we kick off with this afternoon's bit of the big plastics debate, I have a very quick announcement to make, which is over here we have, just over there, we have our innovation gallery, and visitors have been voting during the day and a half so far of the show for which one they think is the most innovative innovation on show. I'm going to announce the winner, and I am absolutely delighted to announce that Beresford Ribbon and Bows have won for their bespoke print services. So Beresford, there should be somebody from you nearby. Many congratulations. And you have a trophy.
Thank you.
Fabulous. And we'll just do a photo call. Stand G14, do go and say hello.
Right, a very quick photo call. There we go. And gone. Right. Thank you.
Right.
Do you want?
Well, and yes, sorry, I'll say 5 more seconds, Martin. The session this afternoon has been that we work with partners who work so hard to put these sessions together. And before we kick off, I want to extend our enormous gratitude and thanks from Easy Fairs to Martin Kirsch of the Food Service Packaging Association, who's done so much to help support the big plastics debate over the 2 days. So thank you, Martin.
Thank you.
And in case I don't get the opportunity, Jane Beavis of OPRL, who helped so much to put together the second session this afternoon that you will all be hearing later. So thank you, Jane.
Well, it's excellent to get the applause at the beginning of the show, because I don't normally get it at the very end, so thank you. Welcome, everybody, to part 2 of the big plastics debate. For those of you who came yesterday, this genuinely is part 2. For others, you'll just have to catch up. I say that because there is a continuing theme here, a very strong theme, which is all about how businesses can be part of the solution rather than the problem. And that is the absolute theme to this, to be the solution, not the problem, and how that can happen. As we said yesterday, this is not about saying this is what you should do and what you shouldn't do. This is all about informing you and widening the perspective. Indeed, what we're trying to do is ensure that you don't make knee-jerk reactions. That everything you do will have a desired effect, will actually achieve something, and won't be done just because it makes you look good in a newspaper. And I think we have to do that. We have to do things which are going to endure for the long term and be effective. The theme continues, as I mentioned, and there are 2 parts to today. First of all, we have innovation, and this is going to be a series of materials, a series of formats, and if you like, this is Dragon Den without the money. So, well, at least I'm not aware of that unless anybody is going to stump up anything, they're very welcome. So that is what the first part is, and that is excellent, and that comes out, hopefully, that reflects some of the thinking from yesterday. The next part, very important, we alluded to this yesterday, that in all of the ideas can be absolutely brilliant and have these great end-of-life scenarios, but unless waste management is able to deal with them and implement them, then the end of life which is planned is not going to happen. So therefore, the urge is to listen carefully to what our excellent waste management experts have to say and have dialogue with them. And, not to develop things and then not bother to speak to waste management just to see, unless you're, and put yourself at such risk. So you'll be pleased to know you've got a chairman, 2 new chairs, 1 for each session. Our first chair is Ian Bates, who is here. And just by way of a quick introduction, Ian says, according to his website, he's a packaging guru, a marketing specialist, sales supremo, and an expert consultant in modesty. He claims to have over 20 years of experience, but I've got to have a look at that CV. But the one thing I always think, when I go to Lord's, which I do like to go to a lot, I always think of Ian. And why do I think of Ian? Because Ian solved a problem which has baffled man for centuries. How can you buy 6 pints of beer without spilling a drop? And if you ever see people, and even 12 pints, I mean, with the double-sized ones you get now, and you've got a little carrier and you put inside, all made of board, and you can carry 6 pints. And I think that is improved life, no end. So thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, Ian.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the introduction, Martin. Welcome, everybody. So it's my job to chair this debate today, which I think is going to be very exciting. So can you hear me, everybody at the back? Excellent. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do is introduce the dragons. So let's go from the end here. If you wouldn't mind standing up, quick summary of who you are and what you do. Right, hang on a second. Peter, sorry, can't hear you. You're going to have to come up here and use the microphone. Go.
Right. Okay, hi, I'm Peter Maddox. I'm Director of RAP. One of the things I'm responsible for is managing the UK Plastics Pact, which has had loads of interest from businesses across the UK. The first goal of the UK Plastics Pact is to get rid of unnecessary and problematic packaging. And so I'm really, really interested to hear what these guys have got to say today.
Thanks, Peter. Dick Searle.
Hi, I'm Dick Searle. I'm Chief Executive of the Packaging Federation, which is the overarching trade association for the UK packaging industry. I'm passionate about packaging, and I'm just starting my 52nd year in the industry.
Thank you. David Newman.
Hi, I'm David, and I'm Managing Director of the Trade Association, which represents all those companies making biomaterials, such as compostable packaging. I've been in the waste industry for the last 20-odd years, and my passion is getting things right in the waste industry, which we are evidently not doing in the UK.
Thanks, David. Sian Sutherland.
Hi, I'm Sian Sutherland. I'm co-founder of A Plastic Planet. You can see us over there. We have one very simple goal at A Plastic Planet, which is to ignite and inspire the world to turn off the plastic tap. So we don't really want to talk about recycling so much. We don't really want to talk about circular economies. We want to talk about the dramatic reduction in the use of plastic for food and drink packaging.
Thanks, Sian. And Richard McKinley.
Hi, I'm Richard from Axion, Head of Circular Economy. We're a recycler and a consultancy, specialising in the collection, sorting, recycling and end markets for various materials.
Fabulous. Right, so you've met the dragons. So first up, 3 minutes, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take some questions from the judges, from the dragons, and then we're going to put some questions out to the floor. So here we go. Lorenzo, break a leg, exactly. Good luck.
Okay. First challenge is, where is the mouse? Where is it? It's here.
Lorenzo, do you need?
Yeah, I
Do you
need.
need help? Let me help.
Fire up the presentation.
Okay. Exactly. So first of all, I speak Italian, so I go faster.
There we go.
Okay?
We're good.
All right. So, Trans and Packaging, we are the guys that won the contract from McDonald's of paper straws. So, increasing packaging sustainability with paper and bioresin. So, our industry has been static. and related to change. Cost was a barrier, now much less. The Blue Planet catalyzed regulation and public into action. That's probably why we are here. Reuse and recycling are key, but they present significant challenges and are not the only answer. Compostability is an important part of the solution. So where do we go from here? Single-use plastic products are under pressure. There will be a taxation soon. Alternative packaging solution will move towards recyclable, sustainable, and compostable materials. More investment in innovation, recycling, and composting infrastructure is required. Across the packaging landscape, paper is king again. Bioresin solution will become more relevant. So paper plus bioresin provide the solution, part of the solution. Paper is an immediately deployable solution wherever applicable. For example, paper straws. A wide range of plastic applications can be replaced with paper. It's both renewable, sustainable. The shift to paper is already happening because we see the price going up, by the way. Applications where paper can replace plastic. These are some examples. Paper for the on-the-go, use paper trays instead of PP and PET trays. Conventional and microwavable paper trays are available, just made of paper, instead of PET coated paper trays. Paper straws. Bioresin set to enhance sustainability. Bioresin can offer solutions on numerous applications. They are sustainable, compostable, and can bridge gaps between performance and recyclability, which is not always possible. Innovation in this area is key, more effort is required. This is one example of a product that contains paper and bioresin. It's a sugar pouch. Not by chance, because sugar taxation can indirectly offer a huge opportunity in sourcing monomer for bioresin. Majority is coming from Brazil. Brazil has both a sugar mill, refinery, and bioethanol fermentation plant on the same plants. So to switch to bioresin from bioethanol is an opportunity.
10 seconds.
10 seconds is finished. Ciao. I see you next year. Conclusion, recycling is important, but it will not be delivered overnight due to the required investment and infrastructure. Switch to paper whenever possible now. What else I said? Bioresin offers a solution. Use them especially when recycling is not effective. The public must learn, accept compromise. Transient packaging has developed a supply chain or implement utilization of a new bioresin which are higher and performing than PLA, which is a nightmare to make.
Get him off.
I did 4 years and I hate it profoundly.
Very good. Well, typical Italian, full of passion. That's for sure. Right, come on. You're very good, very good. Apart from going over time, dragons. I want questions. To Lorenzo, please. Microphone, please. Go for it, David.
I didn't quite understand. The bioresins are the laminates which you use on the plastic. So you make plastic with bioresins as a laminate, yeah?
And also as a standalone material, rigid, inflexible packaging, coated to paper.
Okay, so what is your barrier to entering the market?
Well, at the big, if you were to a large high street consumer company brand owner and propose bioresin paper straws 6 months ago, beautiful, fantastic, cost too much. So a paper straw is potentially 5, 6, 7 times higher than a plastic straw. Nowadays, because of the hammering on television, because of the Blue Planet, so the main sponsor of this change is Sir David Attenborough. I hope he's here, because I will thank him very much. And obviously Michael Gove, who has announced that he's going to ban the plastic straws. So the change is the fact that the public has changed perspective. The customers are now prepared to spend more money.
Right.
To direct to this material.
Next, sorry, Lorenzo. Excellent. Next question, please.
Lorenzo, I'd just like to go back to that hot potato of the end of life and composting. And obviously on our stand, we've had a huge amount of conversations about compostables and the infrastructure. I'm very aware that right now only 9% of our plastic is recycled in the UK, and only 10% of our food waste is composted in the UK. So there's obviously huge scope for improvement on both. What's your view on which area we should put the most focus, or do you see it as very equal?
I think they're both important because recycling is, in all effect, easier to make. There are more infrastructure than composting, but it cannot be the only solution because by the time we will be equipped with the adequate number of infrastructure, we will still have 91% of the plastic, which will last probably 100 to 500 years on our beach. So, in my opinion, it has to be an investment across the two options. Italy, in the north of Italy, we have lots of composting facilities. South, a little bit less. But it's not something unachievable. It's a question to make it happen. And to be perfectly honest, composting is also recycling.
Okay, right. Let's have a question from the floor. Hands up. Who's got a burning question, please? Gentleman in the blue shirt. Can you get a microphone to him, please? Can you say your name and then pose your question? Hello.
Yeah, I'm James. So you say, you talk a lot about paper, but I think a lot of us don't realize that paper has its own negatives as well. There's a huge amount of energy required for paper. This is all driving up the cost of paper. Yeah, there's other options that of plastic that could be as sustainable, bio-PE and things like that. So it's easy to get carried away with paper, but really that's, I don't think we'll discuss the negatives enough.
Okay, thank you for your question. Lorenzo.
To be perfectly honest, there is no a universal solution. It depends what we want. If you want less litter, definitely paper is better than plastic. But litter is also causing problems to the marine environment. We see what can happen, when the plastic straws was filmed in the nose of the turtle, for example. Paper has their, obviously, limitation. Obviously, you need to source from sustainable material. So,
one more question.
Yeah,
Peter.
I'd like to ask you about the Martin's point about the end of life. So what happens if you're a householder and you buy that pack and you haven't got a home composting facility?
Well, this is not recyclable. It will be landfilled, and we will become either CO2 or methane, depending if it goes underground or it stays overground. But for sure it will degrade compared to PET, which lasts 500 years.
So you're obviously aware that paper in landfill is going to create a lot of methane, and plastics in landfill is not.
Yes, but it depends what you do, because there are many facilities, for example, in Bologna, where lots of rubbish is collected in methane, and the methane is used to light the city. Okay. So again, it depends how you want to deploy this resource, which is waste.
Fantastic.
There are many ways to deploy resources.
Lorenzo, thank you very much. Big hand for Lorenzo. Okay, we now have Gary T from FFP. Gary, if you'd like to take the stand. Thank you.
Please don't. Can't get it to work on my finger. Sweaty hands. Okay, I take it this is working.
Yeah, but you need to use the mic.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me?
Starting now.
Excellent. Okay, right. Okay, I'm Gary from FFP, and I'm here to hopefully inspire you on the potential evolution of flexible packaging. So FFP, just briefly, we're a flexible manufacturer and innovator, and we've been doing that for the past 50 years. We offer a lot of oil-based structures in our current portfolio, but we are looking to evolve that going forward. So examples of our current innovations would include the all-polyester ovenable cook in the bag, which we launched into Asda for chickens. We did the first post-consumer recycled lidding film, which we launched into M&S many years ago, well ahead of its time. We also developed the first pre-applied label reseal system, which helped reduce food waste, which was launched into Tesco's. And more recently, our fully printed ovenable doy bag, which we've since launched into Sainsbury's to challenge the CPET tray, lid and sleeve market. So why are we doing what we're doing? Well, we, like you, are very aware of the consumer's reaction to packaging and what happens when it's handled irresponsibly. So we decided to really look at our portfolio of products to see how we could do things differently. So we chose 3 typical structures that we would offer. So polyester and polythene will be one, OPP laminates, and OPP and polythene. And we looked to see what could we do differently with those materials to give our customers some real choice in the future. So we developed a range of 3 materials. We have them here, so you're welcome to see those afterwards. They're all wood-based, so it's a combination of paper and cellulose. So some are all cellulose-based, and some are paper and cellulose. They can be fully printed. They can be supplied as either pre-made pouches and bags or as roll stock, and we've ran these materials down horizontal and vertical form-fill packing lines. They have really good oxygen barrier and good water vapor barrier, so they're really functional materials. We've not got something here that theoretically will work. They'll actually deliver good pack performance. The packaging is widely suited to dried goods. Due to the materials we use, they're not going to work particularly well in a very wet environment. So we're looking at things like confectionery, crisps, snacks, pasta and rice, as well as cereals and grains. So as you can see, there's a wide variety of products that this particular packaging format could be used for. Our planned methods of disposal, now we're already doing work into these. On the paper, cellulose structure would be paper recycling, so we'd recover the paper fibres from the structure. And on the all cellulose structures, we would look ultimately for that to go to composting, no doubt through some food waste collection method in the future. So that was short and brief, but that's our vision on what could be the evolution of flexible packaging.
Fabulous. Well done. Grab a mic. Thank you, Gary. Really good. Questions from the panel, please. From the Dragons. Richard. Oh, no, Dick.
Only my mother called me Richard, and she died a few years ago.
Sorry.
When is plastic not plastic? Right? And for me, cellulose acetate is a plastic. It's a very old plastic. But I think the real question, since so much of the furore is about plastics ending up in the wrong place, particularly in the ocean, what's the scientific evidence of the performance of cellulose acetate in the ocean?
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. Our definition of plastic is materials that aren't based on oil. Plastic is a state, and cellulose could be classified as a plastic. But in the general scheme of the Daily Mail, if you like, the Daily Mail, we're using the oil-based logic. Cellulose in the ocean. I've got Andy here from Food Tomorrow who could answer that question far better than I can.
Key point, it's not cellulose acetate, it's cellulose. Okay, so it's different.
Thank you, Andy.
Same question, what happens to it in the ocean? Whatever it's made of, what happens to it in the ocean?
Andy, do you want to answer that question as you're the expert? Give Andy the mic, please.
Well, I would actually mention it in my pitch a bit later on, but yeah, the materials are biodegradable, compostable, industrial, home, and marine.
Thank you very much.
To the standards that we know of at this moment, bearing in mind that marine is still evolving.
That's good to know. Thank you. Right, another question from the panel. Richard.
Thank you. So I've got a lovely metallized paper.
Yeah.
What will happen to this metallization? Is it a very, very small amount? Would you expect the consumer to understand what it is?
The metallization is a very, very thin layer applied to the cellulose. That cellulose is a fully compostable certificated grade. So the levels on there are permissible within the EN 13432 composting regulations.
Super top. Sean.
Just a super quick question about cost. Have you had much pushback on increased costs for this?
If we deal with buyers, then the answer is yes. I think we have to deal with brand owners and people who invest effort into what this can bring to their product. So we've got some serious conversations going on with brand owners currently that feel that investment in this type of packaging is worthwhile and relevant for their brand. But it ultimately costs more than conventional packaging.
Okay, question from the floor. Hands up fast. Anybody got a question for Gary? Come on. Anybody? Thank you. Oh, here we go. Thank you.
Does it give the same functionality and barrier properties as plastics do?
It doesn't give exactly the same. No, we've got very good oxygen barrier, 1 cc per square metre. Water vapour is 20 grams per square metre, so it does have good functional barriers, but it isn't going to be as durable as oil-based plastic materials would conventionally be. And that's why we're not encouraging it to be used in wet environments.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Gary. Big hand.
Okay, thank you.
Right, next up we have Marcel Assange from Bull Packaging. Marcel, good luck.
So let me do this for you.
Excuse me.
No.
Mine was the bottom one.
Was it this one?
That's the one.
Is this PDF?
It's PDF. Should be just there. Just there.
Is it that one?
No, the middle. That's it. That's it.
That one?
She works the tree. Yeah.
Nope.
I have my laptop if you want.
Let me. Joel, yes. Could you help us, please? Windows P. Forgive us for this. Yes?
Any other questions for Gary while we're waiting?
I'm saying duplicate. There we go.
It's not a question for Gary. It's
a relief.
it's a question about 9% of plastics is recycled. I'm sorry, I don't. I'm sorry, I've wrapped it next to me. No, plastics packaging is over 50%. Plastic beverage bottles is 74%, not 9%.
Correct.
That's a big difference.
If I may allow, Green Alliance published a report about 2 months ago. You can find it on our website. 35% of plastic packaging is recycled, of which 26 or 34% is recycled, of which 25 is exported. 9% is actually recycled in the UK. So those are the figures which I have seen published by Green Alliance, taken from government documents.
Thanks, David. Right.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity. I have 3 minutes, so it's going to have to be quick. I'm here to talk about packaging design. There is nothing innovative about it, but I think in people's mind we have to reestablish that connection because, as David mentioned, solutions are being looked into completely different directions. And before we start talking about edible, degradable, invisible packaging, let's talk about something that is readily available and is, the champion in terms of recyclability at the moment. So I'm going to try to quickly give some indications on the status of where we are at the moment with this formidable packaging. So I work for Ball. Ball is the world's leader or producer of aluminium cans. We have sites in UK. And in terms of people's choice, in terms of a beverage packaging, aluminium cans have natural barrier, which is fantastic for any type of product in terms of preservation. Is unbreakable, so it's shatterproof. It's something that other packages don't have. Glass when breaks is quite hazardous, and is look as a the first in line once we talk about replacing PET. So cans don't have the problem. Is absolutely optimal for cubing efficiency. So you can pack much more product per square meter with cans because of the shape, the cylindrical shape. So it's good for transport, saving carbon emissions on that level, shelving, everything else. In terms of application, it's suitable for any drink beverage, and we particularly produce anything from 150 mils to 1 liter. In Russia, they love to carry 1 liter beer cans, which is quite fantastic anyway. It's a lightweight product. Cans are really light, reduce the transportation. Also, once you finish, it's easy to transport. Waste management companies, becomes a quite easy to handle material. Because the shape of the neck is easy to fill as well. So for the whole production is a fine product. It chills faster. If you want to have a quick beer, a few minutes in the fridge, and you have a product with cold enough to drink. Provides long shelf life. It's one of the properties of metal because of the whole preservation. And most of all, is a monomaterial. Is aluminium can is made of a product that is aluminium is the third most abundant element in the crust of Earth. So it's an easy material to source and also to use as a product. As I was saying, so and it's also the most abundant metal as well. So in terms of resources, we have supply of that for at least 300 years if you want to just use without recycling it. But of course, keeping recycle in the supply chain makes sense. At the moment, 75% of all aluminum that was produced since the first aluminum produced is still in circulation today. This cannot be said to other materials. 10 seconds. It's the most recyclable packaging. In the UK, we have 72% recycling rate, and 95% of energy is saved when you recycle the packaging. And it was one of the most valuable materials as well. It's about 1,000 pounds a ton of material once you recycle that. So it's quite fantastic. So it's just positive for collection. Local authorities love to have this. It's the only material in the household that provides a positive net cost for local authorities. So it's the only one that gives something back and subsidize everything else. And that's it.
Well done. Hey. Well done, Marcel. Very good. Almost kept to time. Questions from the panel, from the Dragons. Richard.
Hi, Marcel.
Hello.
The environmental impact of primary aluminium is huge, far, far higher than virgin PET, I would have thought. Is there any innovations happening on the extraction and refining end to help lower that initial impact?
There's been some. Can you hear me? Yeah. There's been some development at the moment. It's still, I think, 2025 is going to be something we're going to be seeing. But in terms of the smelting, when we're extracting aluminium from the alumina, at the moment it's done with carbon-based material. So as output is CO2, but they're doing with inert material. So we're going to be releasing oxygen. So it's going to be a carbon-free, pretty much production level. So yeah, extraction is absolutely high intense in energy at the moment. So it's going to be better, and that's why we try to incentivize recycling. Because you save 95% of the energy used to produce that in the first place, so it makes totally sense to keep the material.
Another question from the panel?
Yeah, Marcel, yeah. So cans like this are used for commoditized drinks, really. They're not for niche drinks. So what about the cost elements compared with some of the other options for the packaging?
Cans have been used for a lot of, we're seeing more and more for all the products. It stopped being the soft drink and water, like we're seeing water, we're seeing wine, we're seeing champagne. So it's changed the perception of being a cheap, easy access, so it's changed a lot. Price-wise, there's no, I cannot discuss, commercial information, but it's not much difference. And in majority of the countries that have producer responsibility, cans are either the lowest cost for the producers, or sometimes are even negative cost. So producers get paid, get a rebate back by using aluminium cans compared to other materials.
One final question: is there really no plastic in an aluminium can?
There's a because metal is reactive, so there's a coating, a spray of coating, and then depending on the production, depending on who is supplying those cans, they can have different types of element. It's not a plastic; it's just a coating. It's less than what you have outside as a printing pigment, for example.
Thank you.
Nothing that will stop for being recycled.
Question from the floor. Hands up fast, please. Gentleman in the second row with the blue shirt.
So what do you think some of the key technological advances that cans could see to take some market share away from PET in the pack mix?
Everything, hopefully. We are aiming for this guy. No, I think we're seeing a lot of new breakthrough for supermarkets. Now we're seeing water in cans. So if water in cans can happen, it's happening hugely. Wines, is fantastic for events, fantastic for if you're going to musical events. Glass is not an option. People have to start to be revisited on those aspects.
David, question. Sorry, David, question from you.
I'm just sort of thinking that we're missing something here, and none of you have talked about prevention or reduction. And actually, shouldn't we be talking about? Well, we don't need water in a bloody can. We can get it out the tap. But why are you none of you talking about that?
I think it's a question like as for any packaging, we can not have any package for anything as a general. Let's stop buying things and let's grow our own crops and have our own milks and milk our own cows. We can do that. It's just a question like it's about convenience. People buy. We sell in this country more PET in water than cola.
Thank you, Marcel Assan. Big hand, please. Very good. So next up we have from Skipping Rocks, Lise Honsinger. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Good luck. Let me just, sorry. So we're going to go back to...
Second one from bottom. Am I going to click it myself?
Do that, and you're good to go.
Okay, thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Lise from Skipping Rocks. We make OHO, which is a flexible packaging for liquids made from mostly seaweed. So get ready to think outside the box or the can or the bottle. So what is the material? As I said, mostly seaweed and other plant compounds, so it's completely natural and in fact edible. Not that we encourage you always to eat it. It degrades naturally, and this being the key point, in 4 to 6 weeks, just like a fruit peel or any other food type, and can go in your home compost. It uses less energy in its production process than making PET, and can contain any liquid. So we really think this is perfect for the instant consumption, or as someone mentioned earlier, the on-the-go market. So talking about our impact, lots of words here, but the key message is that we're different from something like PLA, which is also plant-based, however requires industrial composting to break down. We don't require that, and hey, it's seaweed, so fish can eat it if it ends up in the ocean. So how are we dealing? You might have seen on one slide it said short shelf life, which is absolutely one of the issues we have to deal with this product. The way we're dealing with that is we developed a machine that will make our packaging on site or close to site as possible. This machine will be in our office in a month's time, so come visit us and come see it. It's really exciting. It can produce in your local kitchen, and it means that you can transport in bulk, reducing transportation CO2, and then produce then and there to be able to sell to the consumer fresh that day. And talking about applications, people say, what can this be used for? It's a flexible packaging, it's non-resealable. Yes, there are thousands of applications for this, and these are some of the ones we've already been testing. So top left, working with fantastic people like Just Eat, who are helping us to get this into the sauce sachet space. Imagine replacing all your crappy little ketchup sachets and pots in your takeaway with our material. You won't even know the difference, and you can throw it away, and it has no impact. Running events, we've got lots of runners here. They care about the environment. Rather than taking 2 sips of a bottle and throwing it away, you can use this, chuck it away. Very small volume can go in the compost. We've done it for juices, and we've even done it for booze. So we did a festival this summer, and it was great. Imagine popping your shot. Of course, mentioning applications, this is not for everything, and we're totally pro the use of reusables for when you can use them, but for when you can't carry a bottle with you because you're at an event or you've forgotten it. What do you grab? You grab an OHO. And finally, this is the next advance in our material. We're looking at applying it to cardboards to create a rigid packaging that is waterproof and greaseproof. This is still in R&D, but late stage R&D, and we are now looking for partners to take this up to the next stage of industrialization, and we hope to see this in 2019. So there you go. Thanks.
Well done. I'm going to grab a mic. Wow, I think we've just seen the future. Very exciting. Thank you, Lise. Questions from the panel. Sean.
Mine is a cheeky question, taking you even further into the future, because this is really exciting. Can you imagine a day where you could have a seaweed-lined bottle?
I would love to see that day, yes. Well, that's the first step with the cardboard boxes and cups. And the next step would have to be bottles. At the moment, the limiting factor is shelf life, and we do emphasize that because we want people to think differently about the supply chain and work out how you do it. But if you can bottle on site, then yes.
Yeah, and my second half of the question, cheekily, is could you freeze it?
Freezing, not so great, because as a natural material, it can rip when it unfreezes. So there is some water in the membrane, which makes it difficult. But that's why we're working with supply chain and changing the way that this whole system works. And what I was hoping you were going to ask is that can you see a future in which we have one of these everywhere? So that first machine you saw, it looks like it's going to be this sort of size, countertop, but like a small fridge. One day we want to see the Nespresso version where you can have it in every store and everywhere. And so people who make their own juices, or even Coca-Cola, can send their packaging their material in its raw form and fill it up with water on site.
Yeah, and I'm thinking also in the personal care market, think of the number of Unilever shampoo sachets.
Yeah, we don't mention that on there because we're not focusing on it right now, but we're absolutely testing, and we've been testing a bunch of Lush products because they're obviously very keen on sustainability. And yeah, if you could change in every hotel, get rid of every little bottle.
How cool.
Wow. There are loads of applications.
Richard.
Really, really interesting. How big can they go at the moment? Because they're all sort of sachet size we've seen.
Yeah, great question. So the biggest one we ever made was 2 litres large.
Wow.
But it's a practicality question, really. So the small ones we made for the shots are, as you've seen probably in social media, about 30 mils. These ones here are 80 mils. So these are the big ones we're making at the moment because it's not resealable. So you don't really want something where you would really want to reseal it. And there's some stat about 500 ml bottles of water that 50% of them get drunk within 5 minutes and get thrown away with water still in them.
Yep.
So maybe 80 mils isn't quite the right size, but 150, maybe that's the right size.
Can we have a question from the floor? I bet there's, yes, the gentleman sat. Hello.
Looks very serious.
He does, doesn't he? I think he works for a packaging company.
Straight at the end.
Okay, Paul Lenehan, Parkside Flexibles. Can the material be printed?
Good question. We're trying. Not at the moment. We can do basic printing with black and white, so simple logos. But we're working on it. We are an R&D company, so we're continuously trying to improve it. Other ways that we've dealt with the lack of printing currently is that we can make double layers. So you can have an outer layer and inner layer with a piece of rice paper in between it printed on, or otherwise labeling all around it. So on the materials around it.
I'd love to take more questions. No, I'm sorry. Oh, we've got 30 seconds. One more question. Sorry, no, not from you, Paul, from somebody else. Gentleman at the back. Alex, is that Alex? Alex. You're Alex, aren't you? Yes.
How does he know?
How does he know?
So my question is, how does this product perform in high ambient temperature conditions? So is a hot summer's day going to affect how fast my water degrades? Is this applicable for even hotter countries?
Yep. So it doesn't get impacted by heat. So you can take hot liquids, anything like that. It's not affected by heat. So hot summer's days are fine. And if I'm reading between the lines on your question about other countries, something we absolutely would like to one day take to the developing world. You already see people all over Africa and India drink out of sachets like this. So if we can replace that, and it's just about time. No one's actually asked me about cost, so I'll just give it to you for free. The information that is.
It's free!
The product itself is currently still obviously a premium product, but we believe that one day this can compete with plastic because seaweed itself is a massively abundant material that can be grown really fast and very well farmed, doesn't require fresh water, all sorts of brilliant sustainability things.
Wow.
And so long term, this should be able to compete with plastic on price.
Lee's absolutely amazing. Big hand. Okay, who have we got next? We have got Malcolm Alum from SIG. Good luck.
You are signature pack, yeah? That's me, yeah. No. Yes.
Go. Time is on. So, afternoon everybody, and Mr. Chairman, thanks for inviting me. Before I get to tell you about what we've done and how we did it, let's maybe have a look at why we needed to do it. So, you'll all be aware of these global trends facing all of us. There is a rapid population growth that's putting pressure on the consumption of fossil resources, as well as, importantly, on food resources, food and land resources. There is a depletion of the finite non-renewable feedstocks to make packaging. And climate change, even though climate change has kind of fallen off the agenda to be replaced by other topics, is still there. I mean, we all enjoyed a fantastic summer. You might think it was an abnormal summer. Raging forest fires in Scandinavia, people in Scotland running around in t-shirts and shorts at 8 o'clock in the evening, you know, that's not normal. So it's, let's not forget that packaging role to play in also taking care of global warming, or addressing that trend, which is clearly also at the heart of what we do at SIG. Quick reminder of the current packaging. So a beverage pack, such as this one. Actually, this is the new one, but you'll recognise them. They already have a very low carbon footprint and a low environmental impact, as witnessed by several independently peer-reviewed LCAs. The standard pack is made 75% from paper, a renewable resource. We source all of our fiberboard in FSC from around the world. Last year, 88% of our 33 billion packs were from FSC source. We've also been, over the years, reducing the polymer, which in the standard pack is oil-based, and we've reduced that to the max. We've also been able to take out the aluminium for UHT milk drinks. And now, one step further, we're going to take out the aluminium completely. So, sorry, I'll put that list. Having gone from 75% in a normal pack to 82% renewable content in the previous non-aluminium pack, this package is the world's first aseptic carton pack to be made 100% from renewable plant-based material sources. So the paper obviously continues to come from the FSC suppliers, certified suppliers, and all of the polymer in this pack is coming from tall oil, which has been sourced from the European forestry industry. It used to be a byproduct of timber and paper production. Now we are utilising this to replace the oil-based polymers in the pack. So the pack is now, as I mentioned, 100% from renewable materials. With every innovation, you always need a partner to get it going, and we're very happy to have partnered with Arla. And Arla have launched in Germany their organic milk, Bio-Vitamilch. Apologies for the terrible pronunciation. But this is now on the market, and they make the claims, happy to make the claims for their product on the side. It's 77% from is fibre, 23% from renewable resources, and with a 72% carbon reduction on a standard pack. So I'll give you the pack.
Thank you, Malcolm. Thank you, Malcolm. Very interesting. Good enough you could eat. Questions from the panel. David.
That's great. What's your return back to recycling? What's your return back to recovery? Is it through composting, organic recycling, or is it through mechanical recycling through paper?
No, this package has been designed to fit into the existing facilities. So it doesn't need to be composted. It can be collected with the others. It's in the beginning, we've done this to sponsor the growth of non-oil-based polymers. And we don't want to have a restriction where it has to be recycled specially. So
it's paper recycling. It's paper recycling.
Yeah. In the UK, it's recycled. It's collected and recycled by our partnership with Sunoco. I'll be careful to answer that question with my other hat on. So if I'm standing here, I'm talking for SIG. If I'm standing here, I'm talking for the Trade Association and the recycling company, which is common for the UK.
Thank you. Another question from the panel, please. Dick Searle.
Yes, I guess plastic is plastic. I mean, it's presumably polyethylene from plant-based material.
Is a bio-naphtha from the forestry industry.
Yeah. And I think that actually points up that the real issue that we face, it's not the material, it's what happens to it and what happens with leakage, etc., etc. Can you foresee a day when you find, we've seen sort of seaweed coatings and so on, that there is something which is fully properly biodegradable in the sense it doesn't do any harm being used in these kinds of packs?
Yeah, obviously this pack, I mentioned about food waste. I mean, this is ambient pack, so distribution without refrigeration and low waste. The barrier layer is a reformulated polymer, but we are working, like I say, we're sponsoring really the growth, or trying to pull this material into the supply chain. We are working with other suppliers on organic-based materials, yes.
Thank you, Malcolm. Question from the floor. Hands up. Anybody want to ask a question? This gentleman at the front. Thank you.
Andy Rees, Welsh Government. Could I just pin you down further on exactly how it's recycled? So in Wales, most of our authorities collect paper and cards separately. So are you saying this would go in that stream and the mills are happy to take this sort of material with plastic in it?
Yeah, again, to answer that on behalf of the Trade Association and not SIG, because the Trade Association of SIG, Elopak and Tetra Pak made it happen, and we now have 68% curbside coverage for collection of cartons to be recycled. What happens to the carton depends on the LA's contract. If they have a contract to export mixed paper, they do it. But we would say, contact the ACE UK and send it to Sunoco, where we've built a specific recycling mill for the beverage carton.
Okay, thank you very much. Have we? Sorry, 30 seconds. I'll take another question from the floor. Anybody, quickly please, from the panel? David.
Sorry to be a what's-its buster, but I was with Tetra Pak the other day at their presentation in Parliament. And when I asked them how much of their materials in the UK are actually recycled, they cited the 68% number. But they were not actually able to tell me how much of the tonnage they put onto the market is recycled. They also talked about the plant up in Yorkshire, which takes 25,000 tonnes a year. Well, I would assume Tetra Pak would put a lot more than 25,000 tonnes a year onto the market. So to come back to Andy Rees's point, do we know today, and can we give a figure of what is effectively recycled of these types of cartons in the UK?
The members put onto the market around about 50,000, so the mill has the capacity to recycle half. I think RAP's figure for recovery was recycling was 37%. So it is something which we would like to see get higher. It's not a technical difficulty. There's no chemicals, no boiling, nothing. It's simple to do. The collection and delivery system, bring it to us and we'll recycle it.
Thank you, Malcolm. Big hand. Thank you. Right, last and by no means least, Andy Sweetman from Futamura.
Okay, thank you, everyone. It's very weird being part of a competition where you'd actually like to vote for every other person who's spoken as well. But we'll see what we can do. Our company manufactures a product called NatureFlex, which is a transparent, coloured, white or metallized film with technical properties in flexible packaging applications very similar to oriented PET or oriented polypropylene type films. We are sticklers within our business of making sure that any environmental claim we make is absolutely substantiated by independent verification. All of our forestry sources are FSC or PEFC certified. When we talk about compostability, we are certified industrial and home compostable to the key relevant norms. I mentioned marine earlier on, and I saw a little reaction there from Dick. What we've done is we've tested to ASTM-D 7081 marine biodegradation testing, but marine is still an evolving focus, so that's something that we will continue to work on and test further before we go out and make external claims about marine biodegradability. It's very, very suitable for a whole range of applications. And here's just a snapshot. It's fully commercial today. In the UK market, one of its best known applications is Quality Street, all of those coloured wrappers, but it goes through to grades laminated to other biomaterials to replace them, to replace conventional plastics in difficult to recycle applications. Now let me just talk about one of those in particular. If we take a coffee bag is technically brilliant. It is reverse printed polyester laminated to aluminium foil with polyethylene on the inside and an absolutely genius button valve to get rid of the gas. Okay? Absolute technical genius. Recycling disaster area. What we try to do then is look at these areas where conventional recycling is not practical and bring new solutions. So the pack you see here replaces the polyester and the aluminium foil with a NatureFlex film on the outside. It's laminated to a starch-based polymer material on the inside, and the button valve is compostable as well. So instead of having a recycling disaster, we have an organically recyclable pack. And that's what we're looking to do. What you see going on at the moment is our metallized film, which is one of the key components of this pack, actually biodegrading through a simulated home composting test. So it doesn't need any particular high temperatures to do this. It doesn't need particular conditions. As long as you bury it in soil or compost, it will biodegrade. By the way, it's important to say these things are totally shelf safe. They're food approved, and if they're sitting on a supermarket shelf, they'll stay there for 6 months, a year, 2 years. It's only when you put them in soil that you'll get the conditions which create biodegradation. So we're talking about a managed process, not about materials that are just designed to break down on the shelf. And perhaps the final word is just in terms of how we see these materials fit. What we're trying to achieve here, and other speakers it's the same thing, is a perfect fit within the circular economy. Take materials from nature, use them to reduce food waste, to get food to market safely, and then take them back with food waste and garden waste to create valuable compost and complete that natural circle, a true circular economy. Thank you.
Very good. Questions for Andy from the panel, please. Dick Searle.
Andy, I'm sure we would all acknowledge that the big issue is making sure that for those people who don't home compost, you can actually capture so it goes into the right waste stream. But going beyond that, chemical recycling is now starting to look more practical. Would you see that as also being a good route for contaminated products?
Well, on contaminated products, I honestly don't know, because I think those are technologies still evolving. I think the key message from us is we need a whole range of solutions, and depending on the application. And I think you'll see that more and more as our packaging industry matures on the whole waste management debate, is that we will look at the application and say, that is right for a recyclable material, that is right for an organically recyclable material, and we'll base it on that.
Got to say about the picking up the point from Dick about from a consumer perspective, a householder, it's yet another bit of confusing difficulties around recycling or composting. How do you think we're going to challenge that, tackle that?
Well, the key thing we have to work on is logistics. Okay, there's a bit of a myth that says there's no composting in this country. Actually, there is a lot of organic recycling in this country. What we need to do is label the materials effectively so that the consumer recognises them, so that the waste management company recycles them, so we recognise them in the same way, and then get them to the right methods of organic recycling. I'm hugely in favour of plastic recycling where it makes sense, where it's viable, in the same way where the application has high levels of food contamination and so on. That is the real sweet spot for organically recyclable materials.
David Newman.
Yeah, Andy, Dave Lewis, CEO of Tesco, wrote to me the other day and he said the waste management infrastructure of the UK is not fit for purpose. Would you agree with that?
I think I have to. And that is why this is an industry issue, and it's why our company are part of the BBIA, which is the Bio-Based and Biodegradable Industries Association. We are reaching out to local authorities, RAP, anybody involved in the whole infrastructure to get all of the pieces in place. It's not a lack of infrastructure at the end, it's logistical issues to get to that infrastructure which exists at the end.
Thank you. Now, can I ask gentleman right at the back with the beard? Don't know his name.
Hello, my name's Sam Robinson, and I'm a student at the Centre for Alternative Technology Sustainability. My question is really regarding I think it was alluded to just now in the questioners here in the experts. It's really that bioplastics, according to Jacqueline McGlade of the UN Environmental Programme, they sort of they behave pretty much like conventional plastics when they're in the marine environment, and they can persist for decades as well. They tend to sink, she says, rather than float, and by sinking, they're not sort of they're not able to be exposed to light like conventional plastics would be, so they don't tend to break up, and they just pollute the marine environment, but in different ways for longer times.
Thank you for your question.
Well, I have to say that is a massive generalisation. There are a whole range of different materials. I'm only here today to speak about Natureflex, which I can tell you is biodegradable in every situation, including marine. Other materials have different degradation profiles, so it's all about the particular material. In the same way as we shouldn't talk about bioplastics, we shouldn't talk about just plastics, because there's a whole range of materials. So you need to get down to the specifics of the individual material.
Fantastic. There we go. Big hand for Andy. Very good, very good. So, shall I say a few words? Okay, so let's open it to the floor. Let's ask questions right out to the floor for the panel or the dragons. Has anybody got any questions? We're going to take 5 questions. So, all right, 1 minute per question. Hands up, please. Keep it brief, please. Gentleman on the front.
Hi, Andrew from Thornton's Budgeons, the supermarket. How do we reduce consumer confusion about all of this? Because as it is at the moment, it is kind of confusing what you do with things.
Yep.
And if things are compostable, and I can throw them on my compost in the garden, but I don't know it. So it's a very general question, but it's something that struck me all the way through this as there being a source of real potential confusion going forward.
I think that's a question for Sian to answer, if you don't mind.
Well, as an organisation, we represent the public. Rather than an industry, we are one of the few people out here who's not actually selling anything. We're selling change. And one of the things that we've become very aware of in the last 2 years is there is massive consumer confusion about the word plastic. And a lot of you are packaging technologists and you're in the industry and you know what a bioplastic may be, and you know that maybe 2 kinds of bioplastic. As soon as we confuse the public, when we have this rare, incredible moment that we can affect some substantial change in our plastic pollution disaster, shame on us. So we must not confuse the public. And the reason that we have launched our plastic-free consumer trust mark is for exactly that reason. This is not an industry mark. This is not about recycling. This is to simply tell the customer one thing, that in their mind of what plastic is and how plastic behaves and exists for centuries as a micro and a nanoplastic, they don't want to buy something that has that plastic anymore. And our trust mark tells them this package is plastic free and that's it. So in our small way, we are just trying to cut through that confusion.
Thank you, Sian. Jane?
Yeah, so if I could just add to that, because I think the key question that there are consumers who are very concerned and would like that question answered. But for most consumers, it comes down to which bin do I need to put this in? And so that's where the on-pack recycling label helps channel people into that. We're very aware that currently the label has 3 categories. The one that says widely recycled is very clear where you put it. The one that says you can't recycle it is very clear where you put in it. The one in the middle is the confusing one, and we're looking to work with the sector as a whole to move to a binary system. So it's just a yes, I recycle it, no, I don't. We're very keen to talk to others about other solutions like can I compost it to add to that suite so that at a glance consumers get the right information.
Thank you very much. Another question from the floor. We've got last one. Last question. Come on. Gentleman, second row. Thank you.
I think it's related to the Plastic Planet statement at the start, was around circular economy and not talking about that as part of the solution. Do you not think that's slightly misleading and something that should be talked about?
I absolutely do, but I think there's a lot of people, a lot of people along this panel who already talk about that. And so it doesn't need another voice in that debate about plastic. We are not about demonizing plastic. We're simply about using less of it in certain applications. And for us, the excessive use of plastic packaging for our perishable food and drink is not defensible anymore. And it is the one that there are alternatives. So the reason I say we don't talk about those things is simply that we simply want to talk about turning off the plastic tap. Let's see if we can use a little less of it. Then we don't need to recycle it. Then we don't need a binary system on the back of pack.
Thank you. Dick Searle.
This will be the final
Final remark.
If food waste was a country, then global food waste would be the third biggest carbon emitter in the world. As a trade association, it matters not a jot to me what the material is used to make the packaging. What matters to me is that the packaging does its job and protects food.
Yep.
And I can tell you, but I won't name them, of retailers who are already taking steps which they acknowledge will increase food waste, but they're doing it, quote, for the publicity, unquote. I think we have to be very, very careful that whatever we do and whatever solution we come up with, we do not sacrifice food waste, because a cheap and plentiful supply of food is not going to last in this country, particularly given some of the challenges politically we've got with Brexit
Thank
and
you,
other
Dick.
issues.
Can I have a big hand for the panelists and the judges? Thank you.
And actually, how about a very big hand for an absolutely excellent chairman, Ian? Come on. Big hand. Come on. Give it up there. Right. Well, that was a lively session. There's no question about it. And I hope the organisers are going to repeat this next year, but really make it a bit more intensive in the Dragon's Den. How about it? Come on, Josh. A little bit of budget now. Okay. But that would be good. I thought, I was listening to all of those comments, I genuinely was. The bit which came out, and I have to say I would award the bit to Andy for saying we need a wide range of solutions. And I think that was the bit which is stuck in my mind. So we're now going to roll on very quickly to part 2, because I believe we have to finish strictly at 4 o'clock. So have we got all of our panelists? And we have a chairman. I will introduce the chairman because she does deserve. This is Jane Beavis. Jane runs the OPRL, On-Pack Recycling Label, really very important. And this is something which is growing. Jane's bio tells us that she is the non-executive director of the OPRL. She is she provides advice in order to promote responsible capitalism. And that is a very important thing to do, because it's something which really builds into that sustainability. Actually, the other thing about Jane is I looked up, and I don't know why I mentioned this, but it's quite interesting. She does come from a family of sailors. And it's the first time I've actually come across anybody who does come from a family of sailors. So that is something which is a bit different. She's also involved very much in local politics in South London as well. So please, I'll hand you over to Jane.
So there are a few seats at the front if those who are standing would like to be slightly more careful, comfortable even. And it's quite a session we've just had, so as the roundup session to follow this, it's been our privilege and pleasure at OPRL to work with Easy Fairs to put this programme of seminars together, and it seemed natural to end with, and where does the packaging end up when we finished using it? So hence this panel this afternoon. We've got a very learned panel, actually, with a number of PhDs sitting on the sofas at the moment, and I will ask each of them to briefly introduce themselves.
Hello, hi, I'm Mike Jackson. I'm Managing Director of a company called Prism Environmental. We specialise in print and packaging recycling for manufacturers across the UK. And I'm also here to represent the Recycling Association, which we've got a stand here as well.
Thank
you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Forbes McDougall. I'm the Head of Circular Economy at Veolia, a multinational waste management company.
Hello again. I'm Peter Maddox. I'm Director at WRAP. I look after all our work in the UK around food, textiles, clothing, and now, of course, on the Plastics Pact.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm Andy Rees from the Welsh Government. I'm Head of Waste Strategy, a job I've been doing for the last 18 years.
So to warm up for this session, what we're going to do is invite each of our panelists to express some views, and then we're going to sort of open up more of a group discussion on these things.
all of this, of course, is set within the context of the hierarchy for packaging of reduce, reuse, recycle, recover. We all know why we're so interested in this as a topic, but I think we also need to pause slightly if I can characterise some of this debate as being a Guardian readers debate, and actually not all households and all consumers in this country live in that context. So to take my own community in South London, half of our housing is social housing, a high proportion of that in mid and high rise. They don't have a garden, let alone a compost bin. 86% of them don't have access to a car, so can't necessarily take their packaging to a recycling centre. So we need to think about the collection system and what happens once that end-of-life packaging is collected, and how we integrate the whole system. The consumer is the weakest link in the circular economy. We have a corporate management of all those resources going around the whole cycle, apart from that little bit where we give our stuff in packaging to 60 million people and then expect it magically to come back to us. So that's what this afternoon's debate is on. The panel have had warning of the kind of 5 areas that we want to look at, which is reducing confusion for consumers by having more consistent collection systems, thinking about when is plastic too difficult or is it not cost effective to recycle it, and what's the answer to that? Should we be improving infrastructure or should we just be giving up on that plastic? Should we be exporting our plastics, and if so, are there limitations on where to? And how do we fund what needs to happen within the collection system and who's responsible? So I've asked each of them to pick their own pet issue and give us 3 minutes on that, and then we'll explore and debate that more fully. So Mike, could you start us off? Do stand up if it feels more comfortable to stand up.
Yeah, because then I can see people. Hello. So yeah, as I said, I've been on the Recycling Association stand for the last 2 days, and it's been absolutely amazing to get a lot of opinions and people coming up, asking about packaging, about different materials, about things they're struggling with, how they can do things better. So I want to kind of send out the message from our point of view about communication and collaboration, and really not leaving out the recycling part of the supply chain when you're looking at packaging from design point of view all the way through to the consumer. I think it's a really important topic because even small changes in material can have a huge effect. We've looked after a site for over 5 years that sent really lovely material into a paper mill in the UK. That site then changed the kind of paper they used. It was for coffee cups. They changed the supplier, simple as that. They didn't tell us. All of a sudden, this paper mill have got huge rejections. Their machines are breaking down because the fibers are just made in a slightly different way. So I think it's really important that we bring everything together. I love hearing about all the ideas about biodegradable and compostable, but I think especially in that situation, we haven't got the infrastructure at the moment in the waste management industry to segregate those kind of materials from materials we're looking for and looking to recycle. So we really need to work that out before we start jumping into different products and different materials like that. But again, we're here to talk to people, we're here to listen, we're here to give answers if we can. It's not always a positive answer. If there's contamination that the industry can't deal with, we'll tell you that. But let's keep talking together, I think.
Thank you. Yep, go for it.
Can I come up there?
Yeah.
I wrote some stuff down, so I didn't say the same thing. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I made some notes because I didn't want to start going down some rabbit holes that I could have done after listening to some of the comments from the previous session. So my brief was for a 5-minute review. We're now down to 3 minutes, so I'll focus on, I think, 3 possible drivers that I believe would help us address some of the key challenges facing the waste management industry, certainly with respect to single-use packaging, which is the big bugbear at the moment. But first, to be very clear, I don't believe that the tail should wag the dog. Good packaging plays a key role in preserving products, and from a life cycle point of view, a sort of database point of view that I absolutely believe in, clearly conserves more resources than it consumes. So my comments are really directed at perhaps bad packaging in quote marks, or at least non-recyclable packaging. And I do suffer quite a lot by companies bringing packaging to me and saying, could you develop a bespoke recycling system for this? When the packaging is clearly not going to work in any consumer recycling system. It's a one-off, it's a this, it's a that, could you do something with it? 3 different types of plastic, heat welded, you know, a rubber seal, a gasket, you know, a spring in it, you know, crazy. So I think we need the designers to kind of, you know, get a grip and really apply the learnings that they've got as they're being trained, rather than being forced to deliver, you know, the high value add that seems to be being demanded in the industry. So the first driver that I think would help would be an incentive for manufacturers and retailers. And that would be a tax on single-use plastics, which are either not recovered, so greater than 70% capture rate, for example, or do not contain at least 30% recycled content. And the Commission are already talking about a recycled content limit, so this is very much on the radar of the policymakers in Europe. This will stimulate demand for recycled materials. We will collect more, and local authorities will benefit on the value front. It'll also reinforce producer responsibility and develop stronger markets for recycled plastic, developing investment in domestic infrastructure, one of the challenges that was mentioned earlier. Driver 2 would be an incentive for the consumer, and Jane mentioned this, to simplify, a deposit return system, which again is being talked about in Scotland and looks like it's going to come to life, to capture more material away from home. This will help consumers to be more environmentally conscious and will provide a financial incentive, something that is lacking at the moment. And this will help drive behaviour change and reduce litter, a major benefit. But it needs to be done in tandem with the existing recycling systems. We can't develop parallel systems because there'll be additional costs that just won't stack up. And the final one would be to make it easy for the consumer and make it competitive or more competitive for the retailers. And as I said, exactly what Jane suggested, let's simplify the on-pack labelling. Somebody in our office suggested the green refuse collection vehicle for a truly recyclable product, so competing with the red tractor mark, for example. But it would give consumers a choice, and it would remove confusion, and the waste industry could actually advise on what is and what isn't recyclable. I do fear when I hear about so much is being put on, it can go in the composting. You know, we are the biggest composter in the UK. All of our compost gets sold as an organic compost. It meets certain criteria and it's used by consumers. I don't want it contaminated with material which in isolated studies may break down, but when put in large amounts into our compost could well clump together and cause processing issues, or leave residues, or cause confusion from consumers because they can't tell the difference between the compostable packaging and the non-compostable packaging. The field's wide open. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Ross. And I think that sets up just nicely, Peter. So how does the Plastic Pact help, perhaps?
Yeah, I want to talk about the Plastic Pact, but Jane, I wondered if I could tell you a little bit about what I had for evening meal last Tuesday night. So I'm slightly different here. So I'm going to talk to you not as a director of RAP, but as someone who is a busy person going about their lives. And so Tuesday evening, I was working quite late, and I got back late, and I knew my wife was out. I knew my daughter was out enjoying herself, so I was on my own. I nipped into Tesco to get a quick meal. I was hungry. And yes, I'll tell you what I bought. I bought some noodles, Asiatic noodles. It was wicked, from Tesco's. Went home, put it in the microwave, ate my dinner. I felt a lot happier. Then I went to clear up. And it was absolutely great because this meal had 3 pieces of packaging. It had a single polymer polypropylene tray, had a single polymer rigid polypropylene lid, and it had a small cardboard sleeve on the top. And on the cardboard sleeve it said very clearly that everything was widely recycled. And it was very easy for me then, because actually I live in a local authority, one of 80% of local authorities in the UK that will take pots, tubs and trays, as well as cardboard, in the recycling. I was able to quickly wash out the tray and the lid. I put all 3 parts of my packaging into my recycling bin. And I know, and I put my RAP director hat on now, and I know that that cardboard will be sold at a really quite a high value to somebody who wants to buy cardboard. And I know those polymers will be sold, baled up as polypropylene, I don't know, maybe £300 a tonne. A lot of value, and it will go into another market, and that is what recycling. So I buy my meal, I had a great meal. I was able to recycle it, and I know my local authority is going to collect it, and I know it will be recycled and sorted, and I know it will be reprocessed, and I know it will go back into a market, and that's what we are trying to do. So brilliant. So what I'd like packages to do, and I know that the major signatories of the UK Plastics Pact, I know what they're doing. They are thinking just in that way. How are they going to rationalise the number of polymers they're putting on the market so that all their polymers, all their packaging, plastic packaging, is recyclable? Nearly all those, I think just about every member of the UK Plastics Pact is part of OPRL, so they will be really clearly labelling it. So we have a real opportunity to really crack on with recycling in this country. And actually create value. And I think it's a huge opportunity for packaging designers to kind of really kind of align with that opportunity and make sure that your clients get the right packaging that they can recycle. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Now, we know that the Welsh are putting the rest of the UK to shame on much of this, and in a report done for the World Economic Forum this January came out 3rd in the world in terms of achieving recycling. So great to hear some thoughts on how thinking has developed and what's already been tackled. Andy.
You've just stolen my best line on that. So Wales, it's that place off to the west. Some of you may not know about. We have our own international football team, which does quite well. Our own international rugby team, and on the same lines, we have our own national parliament, i.e., assembly. And from 1999 onwards, we're able to make our own laws, particularly for waste. So waste has been fully devolved, and we've used our waste powers to the maximum extent. So much so that we set statutory recycling targets for our local authorities of 70% by 2025, and they're currently on 64%. I think the rate in England is around 44%, not that it's a competition. We're also looking to consult soon on a recycling target of 80% for 2035. So, as Jane said, we are leading the way, 3rd in the world. If we were a separate nation, we almost are, but not quite. So we're doing quite well, but we want to be number 1. That's what our minister has set a little target for us. Plastic is obviously a key area for recycling. According to our figures, determined by some composition analysis study, 66% of our dense plastic was collected for recycling. Can't guarantee all of it was actually recycled, of course. So the big challenge for us is how to get more plastic recycled, particularly the plastic film, for example. We've so far had to wait for everything to happen elsewhere, i.e. outside of Wales, but now things really are starting to happen. And as the only government representative here, I think it would be remiss of me not to mention extended producer responsibility. UK government, Scotland, Northern Ireland and ourselves are very committed to the principle of extended producer responsibility for packaging. That means every item of packaging that you design and put onto the market, the company that puts it onto the market will have to pay for the end-of-life cost of its management. It might have to pay for the consequences of its littering. And just throw it out there, you as designers, there is an environmental damage cost associated with certain litter. Now, I don't suspect that may or may not be covered under extended producer responsibility, but please consider that in your design, and particularly items that end up in the sea and in the ocean basins. We will not eliminate litter, sadly, particularly in this country. Having observed behaviours elsewhere in the rest of the world, we have a big litter problem. So things like sweets, crisp packets, no matter how much enforcement, how many litter bins there are, I think some of those items will always be littered and will always end up in the oceans. So think about the material that you use to design, for that packaging if it ends up in the ocean basin. Do we want it to stay there for hundreds, thousands, maybe millions of years, and the consequential damage that has? So that is the challenge, really, that you face today, thanks to the Blue Planet and all the other concerns that the public are coming across. So I think that's, I've said enough, I think. Thank you.
Thanks. So thank you very much, Andy. I will come to the audience shortly for questions, so please have a think about what you want to ask. But just to kick us off, I'd just like to ask the panellists. So we hear a lot from consumers about confusion as to whether something is recyclable or not, because local authorities have different collection systems. We also, I think, are increasingly debating, well, is it also because we have too wide a number of polymers? Plastic is plastic to the consumer. You can't expect them to understand what's polypropylene and what's PVC. So should we be constraining the choices local authorities can make in the services they offer, or constraining the plastics that packaging can be made from, or both? And which do you think is most important? So I'll take you in reverse order this time. So Andy, can you kick us off?
I mean, this is an enormously complex issue. It is a mixture of having too many different types of polymers. For example, I think it's yogurt pots, Peter will correct me if I'm wrong. Some are made out of polystyrene, some are made out of polypropylene. Polystyrene can be recycled, but rarely is through local authority collection systems. Polypropylene, certainly in Wales, is collected for recycling, but of course then it's contaminated with a polystyrene stream. So if only the brands who make yogurt pots, who make yogurt, could decide between themselves which polymer to use, hopefully polypropylene. Local authorities have a completely impossible situation in terms of the materials that are put onto the market. They also have their local democracy and wish to do things their own particular ways. We've had endless debates, I'll put it politely, with our local authority officers who are convinced that the way they do it is the way it should be done and the way their public want it done. We have tried to get consistency. So we have 12 of our authorities doing curbside sort out of 22 using our collections blueprint approach. Another 2 authorities are definitely changing. Another 2 authorities probably will change. So the majority of our local authorities and households will have proper curbside sort. But that relies on people understanding through the labelling exactly where to sort their packaging and what to put it in. Really, the biodegradable, compostable packaging side of things is an issue that needs resolving. Those who put that sort of packaging onto the market under extended producer responsibility have an obligation to think of end of life and to label it appropriately and pay for the management of that material at end of life. That's what extended producer responsibility means.
Yeah.
Are you covering that later?
We'll come on to that, I don't doubt. Peter.
Yeah, I mean, not really too much to add to that. So the question really was about are consumers confused about the polymers? And I think yes. I think it would be unacceptable to expect consumers to really understand all the different types of plastics and polymers out there. So I think the onus is on the producers to harmonise and simplify the number of plastics actually used in most of the packaging we put on the market in the UK. And I can tell you that from working with the people who have signed up to the Plastics Pact, that as Jane alluded to, certainly for the rigids and the bottles, they really are focusing on 3 polymers, and that is high-density polyethylene, polypropylene, and PET. And you will see that things like PVC and polystyrene will disappear from those specifications. I'm pretty confident of that. I think, just other to note, some people are more ambitious. So people like Mike Barry of Marks and Spencer's has stood up and said, well, wouldn't it be great if we just had one plastic that could do everything? So that is a really aspirational stuff. So great on Mike to think about that, but he's thinking about how we can make it simple for consumers. And another little twist on this, so in terms of your packaging design, it's very easy to think about the main pack, but I'd like you all to think about, specifiers, but also designers like you thinking about the tops and the labels and things like that. So you will probably know that if you have a PET bottle which has got a PVC sleeve on it, it's not going to be very easy to recycle. So some brands will certainly be wanting to get away about that. You've just got to think about the pack, the label, the ink, the glue, the top, everything. And that all comes into the equation when we look at the economics of recycling and reprocessing that people like Veolia have to worry about. Thank you.
It gets easier as you get to the end of the line, which is great. I think it's a fallacy that different systems cause confusion. I don't think people move house often enough for moving into a new region and having a different waste management system. I don't think that's huge. I don't think the swirl in the UK is big enough. I think the main challenge is, as we've said, the range of products that are available to consumers and being able to identify whether they're recyclable or not, and the look-alike products, the similar products, and then the wraps, the laminates, the layers, etc. We have got opportunities to educate consumers. We spend time and effort with our municipal partners trying to educate consumers. So flyers, handouts, emails, digital media on the increase. But there is only so much information we can give them. We're quite pleased if people put the recyclables, broadly speaking, in the recyclables bin and the rest waste in the rest waste bin. That's the level we're still operating at. When you have to have sophisticated choices on packaging, the majority of consumers just don't do it. So we need simplicity. We need an easier way for consumers to make the right decisions. I've heard talks about various apps and scanning things, but again, I don't think people are going to scan the rubbish, unfortunately. I'd love them to be perfectly honest, but I just don't think they will. We can put labels on bins which help people visually, but as I say, there is such a broad spectrum of stuff out of there. So the simplification of packaging, as already mentioned, is going to be key for us to capture better quality material. And the better quality material we capture, we can then recycle it at a much more competitive price, and it will be available as recyclate to be reused in the market at a price lower than virgin. The challenge at the moment is when we have to really clean very contaminated material, it is getting very close to or above the price of virgin. It doesn't make it a natural circular choice for manufacturers. If you can buy your virgin material cheaper than recycled, why would you use recycled? We're all running businesses. So simplification would really help from our point of view. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mike?
So yeah, I agree with some of those points and disagree with others. I think the simplification of the collection system is really important actually, because a lot of people are coming up to us and asking, okay, what can we put on our packaging to make it easy for the consumer? And the answer is, well, we're not really sure because it depends where they are and where they live, so you can't actually tell them that much without potentially getting it wrong. So I think we do have to simplify the collection system so that you can actually communicate what to do with that packaging. And yeah, obviously it's got to be recyclable and a simple plastic, so that's extremely important, which these guys went over.
Yeah. Well, I hope, Forbes, you're wrong about the app, because we're launching ours next month in Leeds as a pilot to see how it might assist on the go recycling, which I think is slightly different from curbside home recycling, but we'll see. And it is one of the tragedies of this world that the under 35s talk a lot about recycling and hardly do it. And you need to be a granny of my age to be in the right age group for being a good recycler, I'm afraid. So there we go. So do we have some questions from the audience? One here. Do we have a microphone? Yeah. There's a gentleman here and a lady behind him.
Hello, Rudolf Kalbeck. So I asked a similar question yesterday. It was on the subject of what happens to stuff at the bottom end of the recycling hierarchy when you get down to the recovery area, which is something we've hardly talked about here today. But we have one of the country's experts in recovery, Veolia, here today, and they run energy from waste plants. And since that is probably one of the few practical solutions for dealing with all the materials that can't be recycled in a more productive way, I'd be interested to hear Forbes' views as to whether we could do more of this in the UK, whether we could become more like Denmark, and whether we should be encouraging other countries to do it, particularly in Asia or Africa, rather than putting their rubbish into the oceans.
Okay, Forbes, take that.
We do operate incinerators with energy recovery infrastructure in our municipal contracts. They are ideal for getting value back from the residual fraction from our material recovery facilities, like you say. And it's certainly better than the alternative, which is putting them into landfill. There has been, I think, historically the argument about, well, the ability to burn takes away the incentive to recycle. The data I've seen historically doesn't back that up. Good recycling systems capture good material. The process that we have, I mean, chocolate bar wrappers do not get collected for recycling. They are too good at what they do. There's too little material to make it viable. It's often contaminated. The best thing to do with that is to burn it for energy recovery. So I think there's a place for it. I think with respect to could we grow the infrastructure, I think the infrastructure is still growing. There is still capacity. We export refuse-derived fuel into Europe, which we could burn in the UK and contribute low-carbon energy into our grid. So it's doable. The carbon balance is still better than landfill, but I think there will be a point at which, you know, you don't want any more incinerators. The last thing you want as an operator is have a big facility that you cannot run at maximum capacity, because they're very expensive.
Andy, you want to come in on that?
Yeah, we want everything to be recyclable, but at the moment it obviously isn't. So anything that is very difficult or can't be recycled, we are content for it to go to energy from waste rather than landfill. When I started, I think we were landfilling 95% of our municipal waste, and now it's 9%. So the difference between our recycling and landfill is energy from waste. But we've done an analysis of our residual household waste, and half of it is easily recyclable. So 25% is food waste, 25% is dry recyclables. So we do not want those materials to go to incineration. The challenge, of course, is the price differential between incineration and recycling, where our local authorities have got to spend more effort trying to get those last few recyclables out, and so it's easier for them to send it for energy from waste because it's cheaper. Now that is an issue that needs looking at, because we do not want those materials to go to energy from waste.
Lady here had a question.
Hi. I just wanted to know, are there any future plans to help with the recyclability of crisp packets?
Who wants to take that one? Peter.
Well, I mean, I think the point about the recyclability, I think it's a design problem. I think it's really up to designers to think about what kind of materials and how they put the pack together. The recyclability is really, you know, something for designers and material scientists to think about. And I think Andy's trying to come in now.
Yeah, under the potential new extended producer responsibility regime, subject to consultation, a modulated fee may or may not be set for different types of packaging. So something like a crisp packet that is very difficult to recycle might have an incredibly high modulated fee to persuade the brands and packaging designers to think of a different type of packaging material that would be more recyclable to reduce the cost.
Okay, so if the film hasn't
the
been
hands are
through
going
production and it has been contaminated with the crisps, then this can be recycled. So it's like the cleaning that the recycling plant that we need to look at. So if that was in place, then we would be able to already recycle some of the crisp packets that we're already using. So is there something that in the future, that's what we're looking at doing?
Okay, so I just think it makes me think actually. Dick Searle mentioned in the previous session something called chemical recycling, and so this is not just about separating the polymers mechanically is what we think about recycling today. It's about getting those polymers, breaking them back down to the original molecules, chemicals you might say, and then building them back up into polymers again. So that's the kind of a new technology that's been coming through. There's a few people in the UK already starting to pilot that. And so I think for the what you might call the film, the flexible, the crisp packets, that is an option that will come, will hopefully emerge in future years.
Okay, so we've got lots of questions. I'm going to ask people who haven't previously asked first.
My name's Chris Radway from Circular Economy Consultancy, Circulonomy Limited. I just wanted to ask a slightly different question here. We've been talking about things which are, well, in my view at least, mainly littering impacts on the one hand, and then recyclability impacts on the other hand. But what about the carbon impacts of plastics? And I'm quite interested to see that Coca-Cola's already got their plant bottle, which contains 30% of bio-origin PET. Now, of course, a lot of consumers get confused between bio-origin plastics and compostable plastics, which is, very understandable confusion. But actually, this is bio-origin plastic PET made from plant wastes, actually. So along with this idea of using bio-origin plastics and, of course, recycling, what are the panel's views on this route towards reducing the carbon impacts of plastics used for packaging? Thank you.
So, Michael Forbes, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, I'm start. I think as long as the polymer is molecularly identical, then it will go into the recycling stream and it can be recycled using conventional recycling processes. If it's not molecularly identical, then we have problems. Then we're talking about a contamination issue. So again, a lot of this is coming down to how you communicate to the customer, or the consumer, sorry, and how the consumer can be incentivized or enabled to put it in the right place.
Yep. Mike, your microphone.
I would agree with that, and I think obviously there had to be a very thorough life cycle assessment be done for these kind of things. It's very easy to think, because we're kind of doing it in the biological cycle, this idea that it's all nature and therefore it's all very good. I mean, what we do know is that plants are quite important for food. Land is very important for growing food, and so there's a whole load of issues, not just carbon, but including biodiversity and everything like that needs to be considered. But I certainly think that's a very the concept is an original concept which should be explored. I would certainly support that.
Yeah. So the proper mic, it's your members who have to cope with whatever comes out of this.
Yeah, and I think Forbes answered it very well. It's all about the structure of what they're receiving. As long as they can process it, that's absolutely fine. If it's going to cause contamination, then it's not. It's pretty simple, really.
And is there also the possibility of it's recyclable but at reduced value?
That's a more complicated question. It's all about the end product that you're able to get out of the material, and obviously the customers. And if it's the same molecular structure, there shouldn't be any difference to the end product. So I shouldn't see that being a problem. If that changes the product and there's contamination in the product, then you're talking a different game. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. Now there's somebody over here, and then I've got one there, and Richard in the front.
Hi, I'm Harry. So you talked about simplifying knowledge for consumers. I was wondering what you thought of the idea of changing the whole structure in supermarkets. Rather having your aisles with beets, listed, why don't you have aisles with different plastics? Aisles which are recyclable, aren't recyclable, aisles that are gradable. That way it's just there's a very clear message to the consumer which works. Just wondering what you thought of that idea.
You've never been shopping with me, obviously. Well, so I'll tee something up. I mean, What we have to remember is, for the consumer, packaging is just something that arrives by accident in their, because what they're buying is the product. There are consumers who are very concerned about packaging and recycling, but for most of them, it's just something they deal with, suddenly realise they've got it in their hand and they need to do something at the end of the day. They're not going to choose what they buy on the basis of what it's packaged in. They might pressure their favourite brand to change to something they like better, but if they like that product, they're probably not going to give up buying it. So they shop because, according to, I want to go down an aisle that's got cans of beans on and then an aisle that's got cereal boxes on. That's the way they look at it. Peter?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting idea, but I kind of agree really with Jane and about when consumers go into supermarkets, they're thinking about the food and the idea of having. I'm not an expert on store design, but you can imagine that it would be fairly complex and high cost for the retailer, and that would actually only end up adding to the cost for the consumer.
And I think when we talk about simplifying, we're not talking about simplifying the choice of which product you're going to buy. We're talking about having all of the aisles with one polymer, or all of the aisles with carton board, or one product. That's what we're talking about with simplifying.
Right. So I had a question here, gentleman with the beard.
Yes, I was just going to follow up with the extended producer responsibility legislation that you say is coming in, and you were saying that there would be some kind of financial penalty for the companies producing this material if it was unrecyclable or undealable with. And I was just wondering, is there also mechanisms in place to prevent the producer then passing on those extra costs just directly to us, the consumer, and not paying for it themselves?
That is a very good question. Under the current packaging regime, I think it's something like £70 million it costs the producers. They either take a hit in their profits or they do put it onto the price of the item. That is up to the individual brands to decide what best to do in a very commercial market. They will have to bear a much, much greater cost. There's a rule of thumb at the moment that they only pay about 10% of the overall cost for the local authority collection side of things. So the marketplace is talking about a figure of 600 to 700 million pounds instead of 70 million pounds. So yeah, I mean that cost will either have to be borne by the brands or the manufacturers themselves or passed on to the customer. So then it's the customer paying for the management of the packaging, waste that they've bought, rather than the general public through general taxation. That's a matter for debate through the consultation process.
So Forbes and Mike, if we move to this system where we're looking at several multiples of the current amount being available to invest in our infrastructure and in engaging consumers, what do you think the chief changes that we need to see in the first instance? And I'm thinking in a world where, exporting our waste and asking other people in Southeast Asia to solve the problem for us is becoming less and less acceptable.
The export question is a really interesting one. We rely heavily on exporting our material to all over the world, including Europe. It's a really important part of our economy and our recycling systems, and we definitely need it to go hand in hand with our domestic market. But yeah, you're right in the fact that you're implying that it's because we don't have the system set up in the UK to reprocess enough material in the UK, and that's absolutely right as well, because it's not cost effective. Whether this system will promote that, I think that's the intention, and I hope that does come to fruition. But that will need some, I think, control over where the money is spent, because at the moment it's almost The PRN at the moment almost acts as a profit buffer, and it just makes it commercially viable to actually move products within the system, and it doesn't necessarily get segregated and put towards the future or infrastructure, even though it's supposed to. So hopefully it will, but it needs to be regulated quite closely, I think.
Yeah. And Forbes, I don't know if you saw Lord Devon's contribution yesterday, but one of his thoughts was that actually the value of the permits should in effect be much higher for anything processed within the UK economy and discounted for anything that goes outside of the UK. So you get less money for PERNs than PRNs. What kind, is that a way forward, and what kind of impact could it have in terms of growing the circular economy here in the UK?
I think it could be part of the way forward, because the export PRN does attract material out of the country, and we're seeing that. We're seeing lack of, well, we're seeing I can give HDPE for those involved in milk in the room. HDPE, recycled HDPE is an all-time high, trading $5.50 to $5.80 for a bale of HDPE bottles, absolute all-time high, and making it very difficult to do economically viable recycling in the UK. The material in the UK is selling outside of the UK. So if we leveled the playing field and made it easier to recycle to keep the material in the UK, I'd still like to be able to trade globally. I believe, what we've got are commodities. And if the demand is enough, why shouldn't we be able to sell it outside of the UK? But we also need to be able to sustain our own recycling infrastructure. So it is a balance.
Yeah. And Peter, with one of the aims of the Plastics Pact being to increase the level of recyclate in packaging, do we want to hold on to it here in the UK?
Yes, so there's several things here. So I'd like to pick up the point that Forbes made there about export markets. I mean, to be really clear, there's a myth here that somehow we're kind of exporting a lot of rubbish abroad. The reality is that there are other countries abroad who want our materials. So, for example, we are a very affluent nation. We import lots of things from Southeast Asia, our electronics goods. As a result of that, we import lots of cardboard. In the UK, we cannot use all that waste cardboard, that recycled cardboard, so we have to export it back to China so it is used again. So actually, in a global way, you're seeing the circular economy. It's exactly the same for plastics. So the same way that I'm sure you and your businesses look outside the UK for business, so does the recycling and reprocessing sector. That's a really important point to make. But what I do think is that you've seen in the last 2 years is that China, as a huge market, it's really been using its market power. And, it's beginning to China itself is taking the environment a lot more seriously. It is actually a leading nation now in terms of circular economy thinking. They are thinking about their resources, and they have decided that they can, start turning the tap off, and they're putting pressure on us. So I think the result of what China is doing and other countries in the Southeast Asia is that we have to add quality to what we are reprocessing in the UK. So quality materials we can export around the world in the same way that we might export other goods, high quality manufacturing goods from the UK, which is perfectly valid. So I think, going back to the point, the question Jane asked me, yes, we will need infrastructure in the UK to turn some of these recycled materials back into quality materials that meet a very clear specification. And yes, they have high value. So it's a huge, exciting opportunity for the UK to really get in the cutting edge. And what you'll see in the UK Plastics Pact, one of the targets we've got on the UK Plastics Pact, is that by 2025, 30% of all packaging that is placed on the market by the Pact members, and I would say that's about 1 million tonnes of plastics packaging, so 30% will have to be recycled content. So that's what they've committed to. Okay, so they're doing their bit for the circular economy. So therefore, we will therefore have to be building infrastructure and building, developing the right skills and capacity to really upgrade what we're doing. So it's a really exciting time. And again, go back to the point about designers. you guys have a real role in thinking about the plastics you're putting on the market in the first place, the packaging you're putting on the market in the first place.
So we're right up against time. We're going to be thrown out of the building shortly, I think. So just a sort of final reaction from Andy there.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I mean, it's not
Apologies
just
to those we haven't been able to
It's
take.
not just plastic recyclate that needs to be in packaging. It's all materials that you use in your packaging should have a high recycled content. Why not? I mean, you're making packaging that lasts a very limited time, so let's make the maximum use of the resource that goes into it by using more recyclate. Plenty of opportunities there.
Great, thanks very much. I think one thing we can be sure of, this debate is not going to go away. It has presented wonderful opportunities for a lot of people I know within the packaging sector who have wanted to move to change for years. And now with the public pressure and the impact on brand, if you don't address these issues, it's given permission for us to make those changes. Government is fully engaged. We can expect to see all the UK governments pressing for further change. And when we come back to this debate in 6 months' time in Birmingham, or a year's time back here, hopefully, Josh, we'll be talking in a different context because the world will already have moved on. Thank you very much for staying the course and for your questions. And thank you to all our panel.
And can we say a very, very big thank you for a very patient chair, I should say, Jane. Come on, big hand of applause. And before you go, there is one person who should have been here today, and that is James Drake Brockman. Everybody in this room, unless you sent it to spam, has received an email from him in the last God knows how many months. You've probably received loads of them. He is very poorly, so officially we would like to wish James well, because he should have been here. So there you go. Thank you all for coming, and I hope you found the whole thing worthwhile. Thank you.